Hey everyone, and welcome to Longevity Article Review numero uno. My name is Jordan Marsh. I'm hopeful that this is a review number one out of many. I'm really excited to get this started, and hopefully this can be helpful to you. Today I'm going to be reviewing an article called Aerobic High Intensity Intervals Improve VO2 Max More Than Moderate Training from a group out of Norway in 2007. Before we do that, bird nerd time. This is called a bar-tailed godwit, and this bird is really cool because it has traveled, or it can travel, all the way from Alaska to New Zealand, as you can see here. And it does that in 7 to 9 days without stopping for food, without stopping for water, without sleeping or anything, just straight. 7 to 9 days, a 7,000-mile flight from Alaska to New Zealand. If you're looking for a cool read about this bird, I think there's a bird called The Toughest Little Bird You've Never Heard of on NPR. Check it out. All right, so let's get started with the article. Why are we interested in this? VO2 max has been correlated with longevity, overall health and longevity, and when we have higher amounts of VO2 max, that's associated with a longer and healthier life. And this study specifically said that VO2 max is probably the single most important factor for determining success in an aerobic endurance sport. So we're interested in the aerobic endurance sport of living a long life, and so we're interested in having high VO2 max. So we want to know exactly how it gets bigger. So this study was done in Norway. There was 40 subjects total. They were divided into 4 groups. So 4 groups, which means that each group had 10 subjects. They were all men. Likely a limitation that we will talk about in the future. Their average age was 24.6 years. They're about 6 feet tall on average, and they weighed about 180 pounds on average. So, relatively young population, also something to keep in mind as we go forward. So, each of these runners was placed into one of 4 groups. There was a long, slow distance running group, there was a lactate threshold group, a 15 seconds of high intensity exercise group with 15 seconds of rest, and then also a 4 minutes of high intensity exercise with kind of a 4 minute rest, or around 3 or 4 minute rest. The heart rate max that each of these groups achieved in their exercises, for the long slow distance group, it was 70%. For the lactate threshold group, it was 85%. For the 15-second on group, they were at 90 to 95%. And then during their resting periods, they came down to about 70%. And then similar for the 4x4 minute group, they were at 90 to 95% as well. So dash. And they also came down to around a 70% rest during that period of time as well. So the long slow distance group, they did this for about 45 minutes. The lactate threshold group did it for about 24.25 minutes. This 15 seconds on and 15 seconds, they did 47 repetitions of that, which I think lasted for about 20 minutes. So the 4x4 minute group, typically did about 40 to 50 minutes of this. It's important to note that for each of these groups, we wanted to match the entire work output that each group did. So that's what the study authors did here, and I made a chart kind of showing that. So here on the y-axis is total oxygen uptake, or the amount of oxygen that they used in each one of their workouts. And you can see that for each of the groups, it's about the same. And so we know that we timed these exercises in such a way that we use the exact same amount of oxygen in each exercise, and knowing that, we can kind of know that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. Also important to note that this was done, so these workouts were done 3 times a week, and it was done for 8 weeks. Okay, and here are the results. So as you can see here on the y-axis is the percent change, and we're specifically measuring the percent change in VO2 max in white and stroke volume in black. The long slow distance groups and the lactate threshold groups, here and here, had no significant change in their VO2 max within those 8 weeks. However, the 15 seconds on and 15 seconds off group and the 4x4 minute group, both versions of high intensity interval training, did see a statistically significant change in their VO2 max within those 8 weeks. So the 15 seconds on group and 15 seconds off group, they saw an improvement of, on average, of 5.5%, and the 4x4 group saw an improvement on average of 7.2%. So very interesting piece of information. We now know that high intensity interval training seems to be a superior way of improving VO2 max. And also, we have come to know exactly how it improves VO2 max by improving stroke volume. For those that don't know, stroke volume is just the total amount of blood that your heart pumps with each beat. And it makes sense that in order to deliver more oxygen to our body, if our heart can get better at pumping blood to our body, then our VO2 max may just improve. And that's what the study authors showed here, was that the stroke volume also, statistically improved over that period of time. So 3 good things that we know from this study. First, there's strong evidence for high intensity interval trainings to improve VO2 max. And we also know that there's good evidence that there's a strong time efficiency of high intensity interval training. So if you want to improve VO2 max fast, then you want to engage in HIIT. And it also shows exactly how VO2 max improves by cardiac output, increasing our cardiac output. 3 things to consider about this are, of course, the participant population. These were 40 young men, probably in pretty good shape. So we might actually see a stronger improvement in VO2 max if we started with a relatively sedentary population. Another thing that I think is tough about this is that high intensity interval training is good for improving it quickly, but it may be harder to adhere to this over a long period of time because it's hard. Exercising at 90 to 95% of your heart rate max is like really pushing it. And so I think that it's tough to suggest that this is something that you should absolutely engage in right away when you're trying to improve your VO2 max, because your body may not just quite be able to handle that much exercise, and you may not want to do it too much. And then, of course, there's no comparison of other training modalities. Maybe, what about strength training? What about flexibility or stability training? We don't know necessarily how those may improve or not improve VO2 max, and this study doesn't talk about that. So thank you for watching. I'm grateful you're here. I hope you'll tune in for the next one. Thanks.